My name is Frances Hale, and I am 28 years old. My boyfriend said, my ex is coming to our housewarming. She's part of my life. Deal with it. I smiled like it didn't matter. Totally, I said, and my voice came out calm enough to fool anyone who didn't know me. Brandon went back to arranging wine glasses in our new kitchen like he was organizing a museum exhibit, placing the tallest stemware in the back, the shorter ones in front, like the right arrangement could make everything feel polished and permanent. The Allen wrench in my hand felt suddenly heavy. I'd been on the floor with furniture instructions spread out like blueprints, building the life he kept calling ours. I looked up at him and watched how casual he was, how easy it was for him to announce Jocelyn was coming into our home like it was a delivery we didn't have to sign for. He didn't ask. He told. He didn't soften it with, "Are you okay with this?" or "I know it's weird," or "I want you to feel comfortable." He just said her name and expected the room to reshape itself around it. That smile I gave him was practiced. Not fake, exactly. More like structural reinforcement. When you see a crack, you don't stand there screaming at concrete. You evaluate, you measure, you decide whether it's superficial or whether it runs deep enough to compromise the whole thing. That night, after Brandon fell asleep like nothing had happened, I opened my laptop and searched for a name I hadn't typed in 6 years. Liam Mitchell. The man I almost dated in college before life pulled us apart. The one person who had ever looked at me like my thoughts mattered as much as my body, like my silence meant something, and not just compliance. His profile showed he was still in the city, still single, still wearing that sharp half-smile in photos, the one he used when he was amused but paying attention. I sent a message at 11:47 p.m. Strange question. Free Saturday evening. The housewarming would become a battlefield, but Brandon had drawn the lines himself. Brandon worked in pharmaceutical sales, high energy, always on, the kind of man who collected people like trophies, the kind of man who needed an audience to feel real. He could walk into a room and make strangers feel like they were his favorite person in under 5 minutes. And sometimes I loved that about him. It made life feel bigger. It made errands feel like scenes. I'm a structural engineer. I analyze load-bearing capacity for a living. I think in terms of foundation integrity and what happens when weight distributes wrong. When something fails, it doesn't fail because of one loud moment. It fails because small stress fractures get ignored until the whole thing gives way. We met at a conference 18 months before moving in together. Brandon was charming, relentless, persuasive. He made me laugh. He made me feel chosen. The relationship felt smooth until month 14, when the cracks started showing in ways that were easy to excuse if you didn't want to look too closely. Jocelyn was his college ex-girlfriend. 3 years together, amicable breakup, stayed friends. He mentioned her constantly, like she was part of his personal brand. It shows maturity, he'd say when I shifted uncomfortably. Only insecure people cut off exes completely. That word insecure made any boundary I might set sound pathetic, like I was proving his point just by having feelings. She worked in finance. They grabbed coffee every few months. Brandon would come home from those meetings glowing, energized, like he'd plugged into some external validation source and finally recharged. He'd talk about her like she was a harmless chapter he'd already closed. But his eyes didn't act closed. His posture didn't act closed. And every time I tried to name the discomfort, he turned it into a problem I needed to fix inside myself. Inviting her to our housewarming felt different. This wasn't neutral territory. This was our home. The apartment we had just leased together, where we were supposedly building something permanent, a new kitchen, a new couch, a new routine, a fresh start that still smelled like cardboard boxes and paint. Why Jocelyn specifically, I asked that night in bed. He scrolled his phone without looking up. Because she's important to me. Mature couples don't play jealous games. What if I'm not comfortable, I said, keeping my voice level. Like if I sounded too emotional, he'd label me before I could finish. He finally looked at me. His expression was patient, like he was explaining basics to a child. Then that's something you need to work on. I'm not cutting people out because of your insecurity. There it was again, the conversation ender. The word he used to make my feelings sound like a flaw. I turned away and stared at the dark ceiling. Fine, invite whoever you want. Thank you, he said, already back to scrolling, the satisfaction in his voice like he'd won. The next morning, Liam responded at 7:23 a.m. intrigued. What's the occasion? I kept it simple. Housewarming party. Could use a familiar face. Your housewarming with the boyfriend, he wrote. I confirmed. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. This sounds like it has a story. Tell you in person, I replied. He agreed. Saturday, 6 p.m. Brandon threw himself into party planning with manic energy. Specialty cocktails, curated playlist, outfit photos sent to group chats. Jocelyn confirmed with a thumbs-up emoji. And Brandon showed me like it was proof he was right about everything. See, she's totally fine with everything. No weirdness. I assembled our bookshelf while he adjusted throw pillows for the third time. My phone buzzed. Liam asking about wine or dessert. Either, just bring yourself, I typed back. Friday evening, Brandon did a final walkthrough like he was staging a model home. Tomorrow's going to be perfect. Everyone's going to love the place, and you'll see how normal it is with Jocelyn here. I believe you, I said. I didn't correct him, I didn't argue, I didn't warn him. He kissed my cheek, satisfied. I sat on the couch we picked together and wondered if he'd ever actually listened to a single concern I raised, or if my role in his life was to nod and smile while he did whatever made him feel admired. The answer sat heavy, obvious as a foundation crack you can't unsee. Saturday morning, Brandon cleaned surfaces that were already clean. I reviewed my mental blueprint. Liam arriving at 6 p.m., most guests at 5:30. That gave Jocelyn 30 minutes to settle before Liam walked in. At 4 p.m., Brandon emerged in his third outfit. Button-down, expensive watch, cologne I bought him last Christmas. How do I look? Handsome, I said. It was true. That was never the problem. What are you wearing? He asked, eyeing my jeans and blouse with mild disapproval. This, I said. He sighed but didn't push. He didn't need to. He thought he'd already won the only argument that mattered. The doorbell rang at 5:28. The first wave arrived. His co-workers, my friend Joseph, a couple we met at a wine tasting. Brandon switched into host mode instantly. Maximum charm. Laughter louder than necessary. Compliments flying like confetti. At 5:52, Jocelyn walked in. She was polished, confident, the kind of woman who knew exactly where to stand so people noticed her without her having to ask. She handed Brandon a bottle of wine that probably cost more than our utilities. The place looks amazing, she said, voice carrying across the room. Very you. Brandon beamed. Let me give you the full tour. They disappeared down the hallway, his hand hovering near her back like muscle memory, her laugh floating behind them like she belonged there. Joseph leaned in toward me and murmured, That's the ex. That's her, I said. Bold move, he added. Wasn't my move, I said, and my voice stayed calm, even though something inside me had started aligning into a decision. Brandon and Jocelyn emerged from the bedroom tour at 6:04. Brandon was glowing, his validation battery fully charged. The doorbell rang at 6:09. I walked to the door, heart rate steady. Liam stood there holding red wine, wearing the same smile from college. Hey, stranger. Hey, yourself, I said. Come in. He stepped inside and looked around, eyes sharp, taking in the space like he was reading the truth off the walls. Nice place. Good bones. I guided him towards the living room. Brandon was mid-story with Jocelyn, hands animated. He glanced over, his smile automatic, until his eyes focused on Liam. Something shifted. A question forming. A flicker of unfamiliarity, like he couldn't immediately categorize what kind of threat walked through the door. I poured Liam wine, then raised my voice slightly, enough to carry. Everyone, I want you to meet Liam. We went to college together. Engineering program. People turned with polite interest. I looked directly at Brandon, and I felt the moment lock into place, perfectly timed, exactly as planned. Liam is the one I should have chosen. The room went silent. The silence wasn't explosive, it was worse. Someone froze with a glass halfway to their mouth. Another guest shifted weight like they were waiting for a cue that never came. Joseph's eyes widened, just enough to be noticeable. Jocelyn's smile collapsed into something stiff and confused. Brandon stared at me like I'd announced the building was structurally unsound. Liam didn't flinch. He took a sip of wine, raised one eyebrow, and gave me the smallest knowing smile. He understood immediately. That made it sharper. Seconds stretched. 5, 10, 15, long enough for everyone to feel the weight of what had been said without anyone knowing how to acknowledge it. Can I talk to you? Brandon said finally. It wasn't a question. In the bedroom. Now. He turned and walked down the hallway without waiting. His heels clicked harder than usual. I followed, steady, calm, like I was heading into a meeting I'd already prepared for. He shut the bedroom door too hard. What the hell was that? He demanded, voice caught between fury and forced control. What was what? I asked, sitting on the edge of the bed like this was a negotiation, not a fight. That woman, that introduction, the one you should have chosen. Are you serious? You invited your ex-girlfriend to our housewarming, I said evenly. You told me to deal with it, so I did. That's not the same thing. Why not? Because Jocelyn and I are friends. It's mature. I tilted my head. And this wasn't. What you did was vindictive, cruel. I let the words hang, then spoke slowly. Let me understand. You can invite your ex, parade her through our bedroom, laugh louder when she's around, and dismiss my discomfort as insecurity. That's maturity. But I invite an old friend I never even officially dated, and suddenly it's cruel. You didn't just invite him, Brandon snapped. You said he's the one you should have chosen, in front of everyone. Why does Jocelyn's opinion matter so much? I asked. It doesn't. Then what is the point? He stopped pacing. The room felt tight, like load pressure building with nowhere to go. The point is, you humiliated me. Did I asked quietly. Or did I do exactly what you've been doing to me for 6 months, making me watch while you maintain this special friendship, forcing me to smile while you get validation from another woman in our home? That's not what I've been doing. Then what were you doing? He didn't answer. He couldn't. Silence filled the space like a fracture finally giving way. Liam can't stay, Brandon said. Why not? Because I said so. And if I don't ask him to leave? His face hardened. Then you're choosing him over me, right now, in front of everyone. I met his eyes. You made that choice weeks ago when you invited Jocelyn against my explicit discomfort. You just didn't like it when I used the same playbook. The quiet between us was heavy. Structural failure you feel before you see. Brandon exhaled sharply. Fine, he said coldly. We'll go back out there and see who everyone believes. This isn't about sides, I said. Everything's about sides, he replied, opening the door. The party had fractured. Small clusters, forced smiles. Jocelyn stood by the drink table with Brandon, posture rigid, laughing too loud. Liam stood by the window with Joseph, calm, observant. I joined them and explained everything in low, precise sentences. The coffee meetups, the insecurity label, the dismissal of boundaries. So you invited me as proof you're not insecure, Liam said. No, I said. I invited you because I wanted someone here who actually gives a damn about me. Not the apartment. Me. His expression softened. That's incredibly sad. Across the room, Brandon watched us. Jocelyn's hand rested on his arm like a territorial claim. Guests started making excuses. Early mornings, long drives, prior commitments. The crowd thinned fast. By 7:15, only a handful remained. Brandon walked over, face composed, eyes sharp. Liam, it was nice to meet you, but I think you should go now. Liam looked at me. I nodded. He set his glass down. Of course. As he moved toward the door, Brandon added, make sure you take her with you, since she clearly wants to be with you instead. The room froze again. Liam paused and turned back. Actually, he said calmly, I don't think this is about me at all. I think it's about you realizing that inviting exes to prove maturity backfires when someone calls your bluff. Good luck. He left. The door clicked shut. 10 minutes of silence followed. No shouting, no chaos, just understanding. Say something, Brandon demanded, voice shaking. Joseph spoke quietly. That's different. How? Brandon snapped. Because, Emily from his team said slowly, this looks like someone tired of being told their feelings don't matter. Jocelyn shifted. Maybe we should call it a night. No, Brandon said. You all need to understand what she did. From the kitchen, collecting glasses, I said, Brandon, you humiliated yourself. His head snapped toward me. You invited your ex despite my discomfort, dismissed my feelings, gave her a bedroom tour, made me watch while you sought validation from another woman in our home. That's not maturity. The silence choked the room. Jocelyn shifted. I should go. She left quickly. Guests followed. Within 60 seconds, it was just Brandon and me, surrounded by half-empty glasses and the wreckage of a perfect party. I want you to leave, he said. This is my apartment too. I don't care. Get out. I looked at him. Really looked. Fine, I'll stay at Joseph's, but we need to talk about the lease. This isn't sustainable. You're breaking up with me, he said, shocked. You told me to get out, I replied. Words matter. Actions matter more. I grabbed my keys and wallet and paused at the door. For what it's worth, I did love you. But I can't love someone who weaponizes therapy language to shut down boundaries. I left him standing there, surrounded by the party he destroyed himself. Joseph's couch became home for a week. Not a metaphorical one. An actual couch with a dip in the middle and a blanket that smelled like laundry detergent and old coffee. Brandon sent 43 texts in 3 days. The first wave was anger. You embarrassed me. Everyone thinks you're unstable. Then bargaining. We can fix this. You overreacted. I didn't mean it. Finally desperation. Please come home. I'm sorry. I love you. I read them all. I didn't answer. On day 4, I responded once. Coming Saturday for my things. Please have someone there. He called immediately. I didn't pick up. Lisa texted Tuesday. Hope I didn't make things worse. You didn't, I replied. You made the truth visible. Thank you. We met Thursday for coffee. Neutral ground, no expectations. She looked calm, present, like she hadn't spent years auditioning for approval. That was intense, she said, stirring her latte. I explained the lease. 10 months left. Neither of us could afford it alone. We negotiate. One buys out the other, or we both walk. What do you want? She asked. Out completely. It was his vision anyway. I just assembled furniture and signed where he told me. That's sad, she said. Yeah, I said. She was right both times she said it. Saturday, I went back with Joseph. Brandon had his sister there, the severe one who never liked me. Everything was businesslike. I talked to a lawyer, Brandon said immediately. If you walk and I can't cover it, both our credit gets destroyed. So you pay half for 3 months while I find a roommate. Then you're free. What if you don't find one? I asked. My problem, not yours. It was the most reasonable he'd been in weeks. We put it in writing. Both signed. His sister witnessed. I packed my things into boxes, 2 suitcases, my contribution to our shared life. As I loaded the last box, Brandon came downstairs. Can I ask something? Sure. Are you going to see him, Liam? Probably. We're friends. Just friends. Does it matter? He wrapped his arms around himself. I really did love you. I know, I said. But you loved the idea of me more than the actual me. You loved having a stable girlfriend with a good job who didn't complicate your social life. You loved what I represented, not who I was. That's not fair. Maybe not. But it's true. I got in the car. Joseph drove away. In the rearview mirror, Brandon stood on the sidewalk, getting smaller until he disappeared. 3 months passed in a reconstruction blur. I found a 1-bedroom across town. Smaller, older, entirely mine. I chose paint colors. I arranged space how I wanted, not how it would photograph. Brandon found a roommate by month 2. I paid my portion as agreed. Month 3 ended with a formal lease release via email. No message, just documentation, clean break. Liam and I saw each other regularly. Coffee turned into dinners, hikes, museums, long conversations that didn't feel like auditions. We took it slow. I was rebuilding, learning who I was when I wasn't making myself smaller. You're different than college, he said one evening after we cooked together. How so? Quieter, more careful, like you're fact-checking everything before trusting it. Is that bad? No, understandable. But I hope eventually you trust yourself again. You have good instincts. You just spent 2 years with someone who convinced you not to listen. He was right. I was working on it. Slowly, intentionally, without an audience. 6 months after the housewarming, I ran into Brandon at a work conference. Not a dramatic collision. Not a moment designed for closure. Just a hallway, fluorescent lighting, branded tote bags, and the quiet shock of seeing someone who used to be your whole world reduced to a familiar stranger. He was manning his company booth, polished as ever, suit sharp, smile practiced. When he saw me, he froze for half a second before stepping forward. Hi, he said carefully, like he was testing the temperature of the air between us. Hi, you look good. Thanks, you too. Silence stretched. Not uncomfortable, just empty. I've been in therapy, he said finally, words rehearsed but not insincere. Working on things. That's good. My therapist says I have anxious attachment, that I seek validation from women because I don't have enough internal self-worth. The Jocelyn thing wasn't about friendship. It was about proving I was still desirable. I listened. I didn't interrupt. I didn't correct him. I'm sorry, he added, for dismissing your feelings, for making you feel small. When you brought Liam, when you did the same thing, I couldn't handle it, because it forced me to see what I'd been doing to you. The apology I needed 6 months ago arrived fully formed, emotionally literate, and completely useless. I appreciate you saying that, I said. I hope therapy helps. Are you with him? He asked, trying to sound neutral. Liam, we're seeing each other, taking it slow. He nodded, eyes wet but not crying. Good. You deserve someone who actually sees you. I didn't. I see that now. We said goodbye. I watched him walk back to his booth, posture straight, confidence reassembled, already slipping back into performance mode. Some habits don't disappear just because you name them. That night, I told Liam about it while we cooked dinner together. He listened without interrupting, without asking what I felt like I should feel. That's growth, he said when I finished. But growth doesn't always mean access. Exactly, I said. He smiled. You're getting really good at this. At what? Knowing your load limits. I laughed because he was right. Stop! Part 5. What holds and what doesn't. 1 year after the housewarming, Liam and I went to Iceland. His idea, born from one of our long conversations about landscapes and stress tolerance, and why some environments reveal more truth than comfort ever could. We stood on a black sand beach near Vik, wind brutal, waves crashing against volcanic rock that had been standing for thousands of years. You know what I love about engineering, Liam said, shouting slightly over the wind. You can calculate exactly how much stress a structure can handle before it fails. You can see weak points, reinforce them, or tear the whole thing down and build something better. Relationships aren't that different, I said, tucking closer into his side. No, they aren't. Know your limits. Reinforce what matters. Walk away from structures that can't be saved. We stayed a week, hiked glaciers, soaked in hot springs, talked about the future in concrete terms instead of vague maybes. When we came back, Liam accepted a tech position in my city. We didn't rush. We looked for a place together slowly, carefully, making sure the foundation was solid before committing to anything permanent. The apartment we chose was smaller than Brandon's vision had ever allowed. Older, full of character, built-in bookshelf. Liam loved immediately. We furnished it together, compromising without anyone disappearing. No audience, no performance, just choices made together. The first night, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, Liam raised his wineglass. To structures that hold. To foundations that matter, I added. We drank. I never saw Brandon again after that conference. Mutual friends said he dated more women, repeated patterns, eventually moved cities for work. I hoped therapy stuck. I hoped he found what he was looking for, but mostly I stopped thinking about him at all. Because I learned something crucial that night. In that 10-minute silence when everything collapsed, you can't build a life with someone who needs an audience to feel real. You can't create intimacy with someone who mistakes performance for connection. Brandon collected relationships like decorations, arranging them for visual impact. I had been a supporting character in his production, useful when I stayed in my role, disposable when I stepped out of it. Liam was different. He didn't need me to validate his worth. He didn't need an ex in the room to feel desirable. He just needed a partner who showed up, listened, and built something real instead of photogenic. The housewarming was the best thing that never happened. It exposed the structural flaws I'd ignored for 2 years, forced me to choose between comfortable dysfunction and uncomfortable growth. I chose growth. Standing in an apartment that actually felt like home with a man who actually saw me, I understood something about timing. Sometimes you meet the right person at the wrong moment, and sometimes if you're patient enough to rebuild yourself first, timing finally becomes right. We unpacked the last box together, quiet, content, no audience watching. For the first time in a long time, I knew exactly where I stood, and this time the structure held.